Hi
guys,
guys, welcome back again to the channel. Let's get right into today's reaction.
What did the British, ever do for us scientifically?
Apart from the
So
sanitation,
what is
the
the
medicine,
romance?
education,
Sorry,
wine,
British.
public order, irrigation, roads, a fresh water system and public health, what have the Romans ever done for us?
Nowadays, our education system regards the British as brutal colonists who enslaved populations, subjugated the world. Out of roughly 200 countries in the world today, the Brits colonised, settled or invaded about 90%
Yeah,
of them.
to think of it.
Which I think is fairly impressive, or at least I think...
Please let us know in the comment section the country that was not colonized or invaded by the British.
I don't think
Ethiopia was Ethiopia invaded.
they were under Africa.
Oh.
There's something that baffles me sometimes is the fact that, there was actually ever a time in the world where people invaded
Other people countries,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now it's like a sin,
Yeah.
So like a norm then.
but then it was like a way of life. How it is.
It was how to show your supremacy, your dominance.
Your power.
Romans would think it was impressive. But would we have been better off without those bastard Brits? Now, as it happens, they may have some redeeming features. If you look at their scientific contribution at least. Now, this is a slightly different video to normal, and I'm going to talk about the British scientific and technological achievements and inventions, even though I could mention trivial things like the British invention of some of the best countries in the world, like Australia, Canada, Singapore, New Zealand, America.
Wow.
Well, maybe not invented, but they were certainly highly influenced. Or even the only decent country in the Middle East, which is Israel, courtesy of Mr. Balfour. And many other countries that have a great deal to be proud of, such as Malaya, South Africa, Fiji, Kenya, Botswana, Sri Lanka, India, all wonderful British creations. But we're a science channel, and we're going to look at science. Now, the list is long of scientific achievements, and I'm only going to look at the really big ones and some of the more important ones. Let's start. Let's start with transport and engines. So the British invented the railways, steel tracks, railway locomotives. In fact, wherever the British went, railways followed. So they put in railways in Germany, India, South America, and of course everybody copied that. Then we have the modern bicycle, initially called the Rover Safety Bicycle, apparently. Chain drive, caster steering and relatively small wheels, invented by the Rover company. In fact, in Poland, the word for bicycle is Rover. And yes, it's the same company that makes Land Rovers.
Wow.
Now, the British obviously invented the first engines, which was the steam engine, and that broke us free from back-breaking animal and human-powered devices. Now, while the British were inventing the steam engine, they of course had to invent the piston, and more importantly, the piston ring that seals the piston, a truly remarkable technological invention which is even now being developed further. And the piston ring is the basis for petrol engines and diesel engines, in fact, virtually every engine. So no Brits, no engines. Next, they invented the first engine-powered ships, obviously steam-powered.
Well, something I find
Ships'
very
propellers.
curious about is, just like that piston that they talked about there, is how do they actually sit down like, okay, let's create this thing. We need to put, in the piston you saw there, right? There are two lines.
Yeah,
You understand? So how do they know that they need to put that? Do you understand? Like,
They actually see.
I think it would be one person's idea, probably looking at a workflow and like, this is actually difficult like this. What if we do something like this? Then put it upon itself and start the project. And as far as like we sketch it everything out, because most about machinery, before they make it, they have to sketch it out. Then look how it works.
well, that's designing. What I'm talking about is how do they know that
It's
putting this piece and this piece together would actually create a friction to move a locomotive machine?
I think we should be asking any British person watching us right
Like,
now.
how do they sit down and think this? What I'm
Brilliant.
thinking about now is breakfast and lunch. So
Actually, that is the thing. Like then, that was the age of invention, I guess.
Yeah,
Well,
that was the era
Yeah,
of
it was a
what
lot
they
of
were
invention
You
thinking.
can
then.
actually see that's age of invention.
Because
That's
invention
why-
still happens.
Because that's
Yeah.
in
Invention
events.
still
Yeah,
happen,
but
though.
like then it was like a big deal. Like I think there was a trend because there were a lot of invention back in the day. I wish some of them were even forgotten by now. But there was a video I saw online. It was showing inventions that has been forgotten. I saw a lot of funny things. I was like, wow, so this actually existed. So yeah, I think men were motivated to invent things to like solve a problem to you get.
Yeah, and things were kind of like very difficult then. You know,
Yeah.
so they really
There was a
needed
need for
invention.
everything.
Yes.
And there was minds to think of solutions.
Brilliant
Most
minds.
inventions they're doing right now is kind of like an upgrade.
Of
Not a
obviously.
new,
Mhm.
I think 90% of what we're doing now is upgrade
Upgrade,
version
Yeah.
of.
I think it was
the
needed
old
then in the
thing.
sense that things were really hard. Like
definitely.
everything needs hard labor. So they had to like, no, we need to stop this. We need to end this and bring something to make it easy. Obviously, it didn't solve everything, but at
Once,
least
yeah.
it is some
helped,
things
yeah.
and others.
Especially
Steel
in the era
ships?
of traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The steam turbine, initially for powering ships, but now it powers the generators in every coal electricity generating plant and every nuclear
Imagine shoes then there's you
generating plant.
pedaling.
So that's about 50% of all the electricity that's generated today, all courtesy of Mr. Parsons. Then we have the jet engine. Yes, the Germans independently invented it in the Second World War. The turboprop engine, invented by the Brits, the first turboprop aircraft. So if you don't fly in an airplane powered by a jet engine, which was largely due to the Brits, it's a turboprop airplane, which was invented by the Brits. And of course, the turboprop is the basis of the gas turbine, which is used to generate another 20% of the world's electricity. We also have the modern car layout: front drive, transverse engine, independent suspension, CV joints on the front wheels. Before that, companies tried all sorts of arrangements. So, for example, the Germans famously had the engine and everything at the back,
car was a
but
big
since
back in the day.
1989,
It was like the best
most
of that
cars
time.
use
Yeah.
If you're not
the
driving
mini
this car,
minder
you're
equivalent.
bomber.
Ever been on a vehicle that uses steel wheels? Pretty uncomfortable. But don't worry, the Brits invented the pneumatic tyre. So it
So
looks
it's
like the
been
British
powered
have
by
invented
horse.
pretty much everything that runs on the road.
Like it's
They
mostly
didn't invent the
carries
road, that's just about it.
from this-
Well, actually, they
Oh,
did.
that-
The
Tarmac
kind of
roads,
tire.
or tarmacadam, was invented by a Scot and a Welshman. Then we have steel bridges. And here's a very interesting one: the modern traffic roundabout in the 1960s. Now, you might think that roundabouts have been around since way before the 1960s, but the Brits had the inspired idea of changing the rules for the roundabout. In other words, yield to enter, which massively increases the efficiency of the roundabout. Then we have the cat's eye reflector. Caterpillar tracks, which
Wow.
the Brits invented just before they invented the tank. So there's much more we
The
could talk
structure is,
about
like,
in
way
terms of
different.
transport technology,
Lots.
but we must move on to other industrial and technological stuff. Now, of course, Britain famously started the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th century, and it's debated why it started in the United Kingdom, but clearly there was something special going on that made that spark. And of course, it started in the textile and agricultural industry. In the textiles, they invented the flying shuttle, powered looms, the
Oh, you know
spinning
this
mill
thing
for making threads.
Useful.
In fact, if you didn't have the Brits, you don't have the very fine modern clothings which we have now, which is also incredibly cheap compared with what it used to be. In the agricultural industries, there were all sorts of mechanical devices like the mechanical seed drill, the haymaking threshing machine, but also really important things like phosphate fertilizer production, selective breeding. But that's just the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. If you're going to have an Industrial Revolution, you need a big build buildings. And so the British gave us Portland cement, a revolutionary type of cement. Where would we be without it? Then we have things like steel boring machines, which led to the modern lathe, which is ubiquitous in metal cutting. Hyper-accurate machines for measuring things. The micrometer, for instance.
Wow.
You cannot have modern
They were very,
engineering
very
unless you have
intelligent.
high-performing
Yeah. Very
methods for
creative,
measuring
yeah.
things. We have stainless steel, the production of polyethylene, very famous practice, plastic used in just about everything. The steel hammer for forging steel and making it much stronger. The Bessemer steel process, the first mass production of steel effectively. And then the mass production of glass using the now ubiquitous virtually tin flotation method. All right, let's go a little bit electrical. So the first long-distance communication cables were invented by the Brits, the coaxial cable. This was used for underwater cables to link the UK to America and other places. The first intercontinental
It's of
communication,
recent
the
I
birth
discovered.
of
Yeah.
the internet, in
That
a
is
All
super
sense.
the
well
It was
connected.
the first
like,
time
it's connected
that
under
we
the
could
water. I was
communicate
thinking it
all
happened
around the world.
on the air.
The
Like there's the way
telephone,
it just
Alexander Graham Bell,
It
was a
looks like a
Scotsman.
wireless communication,
Television,
but actually
liquid
it's being connected by
crystal,
wire.
cavity magnetron.
It's called wireless.
You've never heard of the
communication,
cavity?
actually.
It's in your microwave, but
It
probably
is the
more
tower that
importantly,
transmits the
the
signal.
first
Yeah,
radars,
wireless.
to a large extent,
but
used the
towers are
cavity
being
I don't
magnetron,
feel
which
like
was a
it's
revolution.
It's the towers that's doing all the work, not knowing there's a connection from different countries, like
In the water. I think
underwater.
Elon Musk is currently working on a project that will put an end to that wire connection.
How is he
But
going to do that? It's going to
it's not
take
gonna just
time.
take
Yeah, no,
it's
no,
gonna
no.
take a whole
Lot
lot
of
of time
time.
because all these wired connection are still people's investment.
Yes.
Do you understand? A lot of money was thrown into it. Do you know what it takes to wire
It's like
the
Continent.
whole thank you.
they
So
wire the world.
just to wire one house, you're hearing
Hilarious amount.
hilarious. Can talk about wires that are even actually strong that can
Yeah.
withstand ocean current.
And sometimes when they be caught by some sharks, they used to go and like
Do
kiss them
repair.
within days. So a lot of his investment has been put into it. So
You
I don't
can't-
think
yeah.
Starlink will be taken over anytime soon.
Ah,
Then if we go a little bit medical, we've got CAT scanners,
straight.
ultrasound scanners, the first town to have chlorinated
how-
water.
Because the machine is looking. Last time I
Yeah.
did scan, it was just a simple machine. But back then, it was
Like
like
a
A whole lot.
a whole lot of connection.
That scan they did for you is different from this scan.
Really?
I feel like this
That,
scan is for
that's
the
an
full body.
ultrasound scan. While this is a CAT scan, it's almost the same size with an MRI.
Wow.
Used to actually scan a whole,
Body.
Body.
not like the whole body, but like a certain area.
Yeah.
But getting a 360 image of it.
Wow.
Oh,
How about the first electronic programmable computer to crack German codes in the Second World War? Accurate navigation using highly accurate clocks, the chronometers, and the first workable atomic clock. Then we have the World Wide Web, a gas stove, tin cans, and a really big one. I know you've been wondering where I get to this one. An alarm clock that makes tea.
That makes sense.
Wow.
Again, I could have added many, many more things, but let's go on to
Let's just say
fundamental
that's the
science, the
process.
stuff
no,
that
that's the first time I've
all
ever
other
seen something
science and
like that.
technology actually depends upon. But before we do that, maybe just like and subscribe.
Yeah, please.
How about the discovery of the proton, neutron, and electron? The three building blocks of, well,
Science.
frankly, just about everything, all discovered by Brits. And the Brits also discovered the opposite of matter, which is antimatter, by Paul Dirac. And more recently, the last particle in the standard physics model of just about everything, the Higgs boson, which was proposed by Peter Biggs. Now let's go a little bit bigger, but not a great deal bigger. The atom, the model of the atom with a hard nucleus with the electrons flying around, was essentially discovered by the British. And I'm being a little bit loose there because there is a famous New Zealander involved with this, but frankly in those days
Yeah.
Kiwis were basically Brits. What about biology? Well, in my view, the two biggest advances in biology were both discovered by Brits. The first one is Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. And then you have the discovery of the structure of DNA at Cambridge
My
University.
God.
Fundamental molecular biology of which the whole DNA revolution has been based on. And yes, I know Watson was an American and Wilkins was a Kiwi. Anyway, of course, the discovery of the structure meant this explosion in growth of the whole DNA industry, effectively, such as DNA fingerprinting, now invented by the Brits. Now let's go back to more basic, very fundamental, and possibly more important medicine. We have antiseptics, antibiotics,
Today.
vaccines, all three invented by Brits. But let's go back to physics now. So we have Newton's laws of motion, Newton's laws of gravity.
Law of gravity.
Where would we be without Sir Isaac Newton? We essentially couldn't predict anything. Back on to the physics, the laws of optics and the way that radio waves travel, light, the laws of electromagnetic propagation in signals and wires, Scotsman James Clerk Maxwell's. You don't have any mobile phones or computers or communication cables without Maxwell. And then we have electromagnetic induction from Michael Faraday's. If you don't understand magnetic induction, there are no electric motors, there's no electric generators. Basically, the whole backbone of the electricity system, you owe it to the Brits.
Wow.
Or in mathematics, and there are a lot here, so I'm going to pick the really big one, which is the invention of calculus, yes. There was another guy called Leibniz who also invented it at the same time, but essentially Newtonian calculus is at the basis of a huge amount of advanced science of engineering. It's as fundamental as algebra and arithmetic. Now, this list is not complete. There are literally a zillion other things that the Brits have contributed to. Actually, there is just one more. The Flushing loo. Now, obviously, much of what those British scientists did was based on other scientists from lots of other countries, and the Brits were just part of this magnificent thing which we call Western civilization. Of course, there were French and there were Germans, and the scientific development and advancement then spread to the United States and now to the Far East. But the contribution of the Brits were utterly fundamental on so many levels. Now, without those advancements, our lives would be short, harsh, and frankly, just bloody horrible.
Wow.
The world's population would still be about 1 billion, which is what it was in about 1800, rather than the
Thanks to
roughly
them.
8 billion that it is today without that wonderful science and technology. Now, if you add up all the bad things that the Brits may have done, you know, the Amritsar massacre, the Bengal famine, and all the other bad things that happened, albeit only occasionally considering the attitudes of the times. But even if you add all those up, it's not a drop in the bucket compared with what has been achieved and the lives that have saved. How many lives, how many babies, children were saved by antibiotics and antiseptics, clean water, or the uses of electricity, communications and transport. Famines are effectively a thing of the past because, well, for one reason, we can shift food around from one place to another very, very easily. Now, look, it turns out that I was born in England, and even though I'm an Aussie, so I am biased. But I don't think it makes sense to be proud of what your ancestors did or were unless there's some evidence that you carry on those ideas, values and traditions. But even if you don't measure up to those ancestors or other people's ancestors, it's just bad form not to appreciate what those people did for us.
They did a
The
lot.
contribution of the Brits was truly incredible, and we should all be grateful that they came along and did more than virtually any other group to pull humanity out of the appalling, difficult lives that existed before the 1800s. So, do you think the ledger for those bastard Brits, is it positive or negative?
So this video was
Yes,
mainly for
so
you.
I just feel like without the foundation of what I've done so far, the present life we are living, we won't be living this life now. The whole experience and how we see things will not be this way. So all thanks to them, because I feel like God sent those generations to us. Because without them, what are we going to be doing now? how will I be using this microphone? Like, wow.
Yeah.
I feel like God will like sending inspiration to them because on a normal day, like how will you sit down and think
Think,
about
yeah.
something like that? That's a lot
Isaac
of brain
Newton
work.
literally got his idea from an apple falling down.
Falling down.
Like,
Imagine watching an apple falling down. The
Ah,
first thing that comes to my mind
let me
is
pick
uh,
and
how many
eat.
bites am I taking from it?
I saw a meme the other day. Isaac Newton, like when the apple fell, like the formula he wrote. Me when I say apple to apple, you know that they stick a little apple
Yeah.
to his head. Like that's what comes to mind. Just like this something done with it.
As she said, she actually made a valid point. Like God sent that generation to actually ease our life, help us, to be honest, because all of these inventions are, I don't know, probably is the way we think. We only think about food and ourselves. I'm so sorry.
Yes, yes, selfish.
Really, but the way they think, like they actually think the outside the box.
Because they literally made the foundation for our life.
Life. Actually, the
Like-
British, I would say they are the founding fathers of this life we are living in. Like they made
This
the
present day-
19th century
this-
better,
most of this
and now the 20th.
Most of this present day civilization came from them, and still most of our building patterns and things we try to imitate and copy is still from them. Just the fact.
What do you think? I'm thinking of how to eat.
I'm thinking,
Again, we need to start to think how to
Really?
produce something. Good. That's so blessed.
well, I think I'm going to have to think about how to produce soup.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Let us know what you think about this video down below. Do not forget to like, subscribe to the channel. Bye guys.